I look through my family photo album and I look at the women from back as far as we have it to the 1800s, and I'm like, woo! When you get around 1990, poof! It's like opening the seal on a can of biscuits.
System malfunction.
What is happening, YouTube? Download Malfunction. We are back in here with another video to emphasize a lot of the dysfunction that I am seeing out in the world today. Now, this particular topic has been huge for me, but because of the body positivity movement and the Me Too movement, it's kind of been pseudo off limits. But I mean, I grew up in a household where I was told that you shouldn't judge anybody, shouldn't pass judgment on individuals because they have their own life experiences, they got their own backgrounds, they got their own issues that they're dealing with. But I call BS on that. I mean, if you just think about how we move through the world today, we are judged on everything. If I was a big old fat hairy guy who decided to walk down the beach with my shirt off, there's going to be a multitude of people sitting around judging me. If I committed a crime and I had to go stand before a judge, that judge is going to pass judgment on me. And if that same crime had to go to a trial by jury, the public is going to choose, or the system is going to choose 12 jurors of my peers to pass judgment. If I go sit down for a job interview and I flop on that interview, or even if I did well, there's still someone on the other side of that interview that's going to pass judgment to determine whether or not I'm viable for the job. So today, we are judging. We are here to judge on this one. I completely agree with what Kevin Samuels said in the opening clip on this video, and may that brother rest in peace. But what he was saying was that if you were to look back in your family's historical photographs from the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, actually into the inception of this country, Black women in particular of today look nothing like they looked just 40 years ago. Now, I know as Black people that we know that we're not a monolith, but the sad and true reality is that the actions of a small minority perceptually gets extrapolated out to the collective. For example, like one of the previous videos that I did where I was talking about, I think the topic was Black people lack the fundamentals to survive in a white man's world. And you can find that on the channel. But I think, and this is just my opinion, and a lot of it has to do with my life experience, is that most people that are non-Black expect Black people to have a certain tone, a certain vernacular, say certain words, right? It's sort of that, they understand how Black people talk. I don't necessarily talk like that. The circles of Black men that I hang around don't necessarily talk like that. But the population as a whole expects this to be the case when they come in contact with us. I give that example because the point I'm trying to drive home is that perception is everything. The way that you present yourself in the world is how people are going to receive and then perceive you. So look at it this way. If you were to come across someone in public who presented themselves in a very disheveled way, the hair is kind of matted, they smell a little funny, that's probably going to repel you. You're not going to want to really get too close or even have a conversation with someone who presents themselves in that manner. Similarly, if you are overweight or fat or obese, and this is how you decide to present yourself to the world, when people come across you, their brains are going to start to work and they are going to start to make judgments about you. There's no scientific equation. They're going to conclude that this person is probably have a bad diet, they're lazy, they don't care to take care of themselves, and so on and so forth. You know what it is. Now, knowing that the world frowns upon this, why, and more importantly, how do you allow yourself to get to this point? I'm sure there are cues that are in your face throughout the year. You got to get up in the morning to go to school, so you got to get yourself ready in front of a mirror. If you have a job, you got to get in front of the mirror to do your makeup or your hair, or just to make sure that you're presentable. Who knows? Maybe I'm reaching here. You may just not have a mirror in your house, but there are cars that have windows. You walk by buildings and houses that have windows that usually pushes back a reflection of yourself. So if you just looked in it, you can see that your back has gotten a little wider. You got a big back now. Your tongue is a little thick, so it's hard to kind of have a conversation with anybody. Your clothes don't fit properly. You know that you can't go into a regular retail shop and buy a pair of regular jeans or a regular top. You got to go to the big people store, or the, what is it called? Big and Tall. That's where you're shopping now. Man, when I was coming up, you couldn't walk into a group of your friends without them roasting you for the smallest thing. I mean, your fade better be on point. All your lines better be tight. If you have the smallest scuff on your Nikes, they will be all over that, everybody, for the next hour and a half. So my question is, why don't we do that for these black women, men too? But I'm talking specifically black women because they seem to have the most problems. According to the CDC, black women are blowing these stats out of the water. They are overrepresented when it comes to being overweight and obese. And black women have the most problems. So back when we were talking about Black Lives Matter, when we all knew that, really all lives matter, it was just black people at the time because of the issues that they were trying to bring to the forefront. Well, this is an issue that is heavily weighted in a negative way towards black women, and that's why I'm talking about it. So we need to get out in the streets, start this slogan, hashtag fat, obese, Black women's lives matter. I know this topic may be triggering for a lot of people, but it's a topic that we must have because I don't know where the change is going to come from. Actually, I do know where the change will have to come from, but there's nothing in policy and legislation where you're not going to get some bullhorn and convince black women to stop stuffing their face with pork back, a Popeyes family meal for one, some fried chicken, anything fried, ho-hos and Twinkies, donuts. I mean, if you're going to do that stuff, man, you got to get up and move around. If you live a few blocks from a grocery store or a place that you normally walk, don't get in your car, leave the keys on the dresser, and just walk. Move around. While you're sitting down watching your next episode of Love and Hip Hop, move your arms in a circle. Get those bat wings moving. You'll burn some calories. You got to exert some energy. And back to what I was saying about where this change is going to have to be driven from. It's going to have to be driven from the men. Black men, when you see these overweight cows walking through the streets, don't give them any validation. Don't even look their way. There's no words of affirmation. Just keep it moving because you already know, especially if you grew up around the guys that I grew up around, they are going to remind you on a regular basis that you are walking around the city with a silverback gorilla. You are dating a fat nasty. And don't try and say something slick to one of your homies because every chance he gets, he's going to hit you over the top of the head with something about your big chick. Your white friends probably ain't going to say much, especially they will never say anything around you, but they'll get back home to Becky and, have a conversation about you and the girl you're dating. And Becky will ask, well, what is she like? And Brian is probably going to say something like, well, she's kind of on the heavy side. There's no winning in this. There's no way around it. And if you think that I'm lying, just listen to what these certified professional doctors have to say about this weight problem.
Let's just clear it up right now. Is there a difference? Is someone who is thick or big bone, as we might say, somehow healthier than someone who has a diagnosis of obesity?
It's important for us to note, first of all, this idea, this concept of big bone is actually a fallacy. Individuals that carry more excess weight, their bones are smaller. So this idea of it just being about bone size is actually completely wrong. So it's important, first of all, to note that. Now, when we're talking about this term obesity, obesity is a disease, and it's important for me to get that across, if nothing else, during this conversation. It is a disease process characterized by inflammation and a host of other issues, but it's important for us to note it is actually a disease. And often what people will tell me is that, oh, well, I don't really have any issues, I just am heavier. Okay, well, that heaviness, that excess weight is actually a disease process. So I think the key thing to realize is that we're talking about a disease.
They need to realize that we don't find this attractive. They need to understand that we don't want to be taking on this huge problem of hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, and having to visit this woman in the hospital every now and then. I mean, could you imagine waking up in the middle of the night and seeing her panties on the floor? I mean, you would mistake that for a parachute, let alone a G-string. Oh my God, man, come on. So fellas, relationships with women who carry themselves like this does not exist. It should not be happening. You should be able to discern based on her visual aesthetics if she is worth talking to. Because we know that any woman who allows her body to get so out of whack where she is morbidly obese could never love herself. She has some internal issues that she needs to get worked out. So if you decide to jump in a relationship with someone like this, buyer beware, because this person would never give you the respect, the love, and appreciation that you deserve as a man. Women like this have no self-discipline. Now, I know that you can't control every aspect of what goes on in your life. Like, you got to go to work because you got to pay your bills, and there's other things you just have to do. But what we do have control of is what goes into our pie holes. You have full control what you decide to stuff down your face. So keep in mind, gentlemen, if you decide to date a woman like this, time is not on your side. It's only a matter of time before she starts feeding you what she's comfortable with, because she knows nothing else. You'll look in the mirror in the next 2 years and you'll look like twins. You'll be walking down the street like two plump dumplings and visually traumatizing everyone else who has to look at you. And that's clearly a download malfunction.
System malfunction.